As our viewers are aware, the 1979 Sino-Vietnam War began on 17th of February and ended on 16th of March 1970. The PLA had actually started withdrawing from Vietnam on 5th of March 1979. The war officially ended when China declared that its intended punitive mission has been accomplished. Although the active combat phase of the war ended on 16th of March 1979, but let's see what happened after that. The conflict did not fully resolve the underlying tensions between China and Vietnam. Border skirmishes and military clashes continued throughout the decade of 1980s until the normalization of relations between the two countries began in early 1990s. Good evening and welcome to Brig Speak. I am your host, Brigadier Rakesh Bhatia. In today's episode, we will see what happened throughout the decade of 1980, beginning 16th of March 1979. On 15th of March, the Vietnamese Ministry of Foreign Affairs sent a notice to Beijing that it was willing to open negotiations 1 week after the last Chinese soldier had left Vietnam. So Vietnam also did not want to prolong the war and was ready for negotiation. Less than a month later, Chinese Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs Han Nang Dong arrived in Hanoi for discussion about the state of Sino-Vietnamese relations. The Chinese, at the time of withdrawing, claimed that they did not want even 1 inch of territory. But on ground, the troops held on to about 60 square kilometers of disputed territory. Our viewers will recall that in the entire 250 kilometers of border, the dispute was restricted to only 60 square kilometers. In few places, the Chinese retained territory that was symbolically important but had no military importance. In other cases, the terrain retained had military significance for future Chinese operations against Vietnam. Beijing kept warning Vietnam of the second lesson. The Vietnamese army decided to be prepared for this eventuality along its northern border and expanded its armed forces. Despite so much of pressure by China and constant warnings, Vietnam did not move troops from Cambodia. After expansion, the Vietnam had 11 divisions and 3 regiments in the border region, and total strength was estimated to between 94,000 to 116,000 men. The PLA Vietnamese army ratio, which at one time was 8:1, was now reduced to 4:1. This is how the Vietnamese army had reorganized itself along the northern border. They created special fronts and strategic army corps. 2 strategic fronts were created. One was Quang Ninh Special Front, which was responsible for defense of the coastal town Quang Ninh, which was vulnerable to ground as well as amphibious attacks. 379 Front was created primarily to guard Hanoi. Strategic Army Corps 6 was established in the erstwhile military region 2, that is to the west, and was composed of 3 divisions. In the capital military region, Strategic Army Corps Serial 7 was created, again with 3 divisions. Strategic Army Corps 8 was the strongest and was created in the erstwhile military region 1, which is to the east, and was composed of 3 divisions supported by RT, Air Defense, and Engineer Regiment. The Vietnam Communist Party Politburo also established provincial military capital in each province along the Sino-Vietnamese border. Coming on to 1980, Beijing believed that combination of Cambodian resistance and its own pressure on the border would ultimately force Vietnamese to leave Cambodia. But nothing of this sort happened. On the contrary, Vietnam began offensive with the aim of clearing out Khmer Rouge guerrillas that huddled against the Thai border. The location of these camps is as marked on the accompanying map. Beijing started raining shells on Vietnam provincial capital of Cao Bang from June 28 to July 6th, the purpose of which was not known because it had no military utility. Probably it was just symbolic. It was clear that Chinese effort to pressure Hanoi, which continued throughout 1980, was not successful. China resorted to recruiting and arming guerrillas from Laos, and by December, it trained 5,000 troops in the Yunnan province and tried to create problems inside Laos for the Vietnamese army, which had deployed approximately 5,000 troops inside Laos. China continued to provide arms, ammunition, and medical supplies to Khmer Rouge, who were operating from Western Cambodia. It also supported anti Vietnamese insurgents in Laos and provided material support and helped recruiting new fighters. Chinese ships and aircraft were reported to be making frequent intrusions along the coast of Qingni near Haiphong. It was clear Beijing was stretching the Vietnamese army to its limit, perhaps with a view to improve the prospects of its promised second lesson. In 1981, PLA did launch two operations. Prior to that, the Chinese and Thais unified the three main Cambodian resistance groups, thereby increasing the stakes of Vietnam Army in Cambodia. The year was also important for China as the US Secretary of State Alexander Haig of newly elected President Reagan was on visit to Beijing. China increased tempo of war on Vietnam primarily to show Vietnam as a threat to peace in Southeast Asian region. It carried out attack one to the east on Hill 400 and the other to the west in Hill 1688. The Vietnamese showed to PLA that it had no chance of conducting a successful large-scale operation against the reorged Vietnamese army. In 250 kilometers of border, the Vietnam had deployed 390,000 troops, and PLA needed at least 1 million soldiers to deliver its second lesson. China continued to add cost on Vietnam and compelled to withdraw from both Cambodia and Laos. Training Laos resistance groups included guidance on military strategy, providing technology, teaching psychological warfare, intelligence, and Maoist philosophy. By end of 1981, the Chinese realized that the Vietnam was a tough nut to crack. That is why a statement stating that no political solution was possible in Cambodia without complete military withdrawal of Vietnam. There was a lull in battle in 1982. The Chinese Communist Party's 12th Party Congress, a very, very important event in the calendar of communist country, was scheduled from 1st to 11th of September 1982. This party congress was make or break for Deng. Debates were already going on to usher out the people and policies of Maoist era. Viewers would recall that Mao had died in 1976 and we are talking about 1982. From 76 to 82, Deng was still not stable. Relationship between the PLA and Deng supporter was strained since 1978. PLA was considered as model institution of China's Maoist society. and PLA cadres were deeply imbued with a belief in the Maoist program. PLA was the strongest supporter of Maoist political program. Tang, however, felt that much of Maoist program needs to be abandoned and PLA and Maoist roots have to be cut. PLA was a danger to continuous rule of the Communist Party of China. Failure of PLA against Vietnam showed that PLA was no longer guarantor of China's independence. Deng was successful in putting across this thought to the leaders of Communist Party and hence was able to replace almost the entire senior leadership of the PLA. 1983, Hanoi kept up with the pressure of the China. China tried to fan the insurgency of an organization called FULRO, which was active in the central Vietnam in the area as marked on the map, but Vietnam was able to contain it. Now China pledged its support to Thailand. It was in 1984 that China was compelled to once again cross Vietnam's border in force, this time to honor its pledge to its Thai ally. What was this pledge and how did PLA fare this time? We'll see in the next episode. 1984 was an important year as far as PLA is concerned and turned out to be a turning point in the professional growth of PLA. With this, I come to an end of today's episode. I request you to please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you very much. Keep working hard. Jai Hind.